It's December, and I'm fishing for winter holdover stripers in the tidal section of the Housatonic River. I'm using light spinning gear with 10-pound test Suffix 832 braid and a 10-pound test Seagar fluorocarbon leader. I'm throwing a little 4.5-inch sexy shiner freaky fish rigged on a 3/8 ounce Titan jig head, both from Lunker City. It's a pretty comfortable day for December, mild with barely a wisp of wind. The fishing's been really good so far, except for a lack of bigger fish. But that feels like it's about to change. It's so different than every fish I've had. If I'm using spinning gear, you can be sure that the anti-reverse is turned off when I'm hooked into a good one, and I back reel when the fish takes line, rather than relying on a slip clutch that they call a drag. This fish hit the bait so hard and changed directions so frequently and quickly during the battle that I suspected it might be an Atlantic salmon. It wasn't though, just a pretty good sized striper that hadn't read the chapter on how sluggish they are supposed to be in the winter. But I didn't know that for sure until I laid eyeballs on the fish a few minutes later. At times, we'll encounter a topwater bite during the early winter, but for the most part, the best presentations are a minnow imitating hunk of plastic on a jig head or an A-rig. I'll throw a single hook A-rig a bit every couple trips, but for the most part, my winter fishing involves a fork-tailed minnow imitation on a jig head. I'll start out favoring a light jig head and smaller bait like I'm throwing in this early December video, but by early February, I'm much more likely to be throwing 7-inch baits on 1-ounce heads. Eventually, it will switch to jerk baits and topwater as alewives and blueback herring move in to spawn upriver in the early spring. But for now, it's all about the jig and minnow, like I'm using in this video. The stripers are in or near the mouth of the Housatonic River from late summer through late fall. They usually move upriver en masse sometime in late November or early December. Some years they move back downriver in later December or early January, but that doesn't happen every year, and when it does, they are invariably back upriver in a few days. That net is the one that I dredged up from 30 feet of water at Lake Willonona on a fall bass and crappie fishing trip a year or two back. I only use it a few times a year, but a 15-pound fish on 10-pound test is not a bad time to think about the net. In this case, it was very fortuitous as the line popped just as Carl was lifting the fish from the water in the net. Initially, I thought that the break was caused by the line rubbing on the frame of the net, but it turned out that the fish had completely inhaled the lure and it was hooked well back in the throat. The short length of line tied to the jig reached right to its lip, and that line was heavily abraded at the break on both the parts still attached to the jig and the last half-inch or so of the remaining leader. I have no doubt it would have broken there and cost me that fish if Carl wasn't ready with the net.